Okay, so hopefully this is going to be a relatively quick video to make. We're not going to be going into Maya, we're not going to be going into Unreal, we're just going to be sticking in Substance Painter for this. Now we spoke a lot about the trim sheet stuff, and we've started to use a little bit of trim sheet stuff in here, but let's actually, while we've got a bit of time, really look into how to actually create trim sheets. So the use of a trim sheet is to take texture elements that are going to be used consistently, constantly around an environment, around an object, whatever, and basically have a texture map where you can just move UVs over that area to take that texture. It means that you're going to have a lot of UVs sat over the top of each other. It means that you can save a lot on data, save a lot on texturing time as well. So you're not texturing every object as a unique texture. You have this one trim sheet that can go across loads of different elements. I have put some links up on the Discord in I think it's in the resources tab. I think I might have pinned them as well, which shows you it goes through trim sheets, and they're used everywhere in games, not just AAA games. Well, we're talking all the way from AAA to all the way down to the most indiest of games. Trim sheets are really, really good. Places where you'll see them is, as we've been talking about in class, a lot of environmental stuff. So you think of a normal, let's go like a Victorian building. These Victorian buildings were often built with wood and lots of ornate wallpaper, lots of trimmings, lots of like very, very nice unique elements. But there's a lot of texture in there, so you've got a lot of wood elements, got a lot of maybe some brass and metal elements, you've got a lot of texture elements like carpeting and wallpaper. So we might have big old square tiling sheets for wallpaper, because we can't really put those in a trim sheet unless they're really, really thin, which they're generally not. So your wallpaper will be big slabs of tiling texture, so you can make a pattern on top of that. But for everything else, for all the wood trimmings, for the skirting boards, for the coving, for the lintels, all that kind of stuff, they're so thin. I mean, a skirting board is about half a foot tall by about 3 centimeters at most deep. It's very, very thin. So you don't need a unique texture for that. Plus, it's going to be used so much throughout the whole environment. And especially just there in the background, it doesn't need to be eye-catching. It needs to be there to fill in the gaps of the environment. So you don't need it to be a unique texture. You don't need, as we've used before, I've still got my UV template here. You don't need stuff like this, a layout perfectly like this for trim sheets. You can take a portion of that trim sheet. So I could literally make a trim sheet for this, where I'm literally just taking that element of the trim sheet, that coloured element of the trim sheet there, and all the sections, because this is being repeated twice on this. So I've got two of the exact same textures right there. So I'm not going to have on a unique texture the same thing happening there. I'm going to trim sheet those. Maybe a bit of a bad example for something that small, but you'll see what I mean for this. So what I'm going to do is go on to how to set up a trim sheet first of all, because we need to designate elements, designate zones for our trim sheets, and that needs to have a bit of setup involved with it. Now, just like with everything so far, there are a million ways of getting to this end product, getting the final outcome. It doesn't have to be the exact same way or the exact same thing as everyone else is doing, or even that I do. I'm going to show you two ways of beginning to set up trim sheets. Now, why we do this is because within Substance Painter, the easiest way to make our life easier for texturing these things is to have regions which we basically say, right, this region is for this region is for this, and we can literally use folders to contain all the layers for that particular material, be it concrete, be it metal, whatever, for that element right there. We can just basically put it, boom, right there, instead of having to like painstakingly mess with stuff. It's going to be really, really easy. So the easiest way of doing this is actually in Photoshop. So something like this. So what I've done is I've set up a trim sheet. I've decided that this is going to be my trim sheet for this make-believe element. Now this trim sheet I'm going to have, let's say this is going to be like a concrete it's going to call it not a concrete but a stone trim sheet. So this trim sheet is going to be controlling stone elements that are going to be running around some kind of object. And what I've done here is just using Photoshop or whatever your pixel processing of choice is. I would say stuff like Procreate or anything like that is not good for doing this if you choose to do this method, because the reason why I've used Photoshop is because I can have guides. If you're able to have guides in your software, that's the best thing. Because what I've got here is I've made sure in Photoshop, Control R to get my rulers up, and I've made sure if I right click that this is set to percentage. Because what I've decided is, at the bottom here, every 25% is going to be a big, long element. And then pretty much evenly split up on the top here are 3 other elements. So down here I'm going to have 3 stone things. And then up here I'm going to have 3 stone things. Now what's really cool about this as well is I've just brought out these guides, and we're all familiar with Photoshop so far. So I can just bring in a marquee tool like that. It magnetizes to the guides anyway, which is good, and I just fill that region in with color. So that's very, very good. But what I'm also going to do is give myself a little bit of variation, because currently this is all going just one big piece going left to right. For this purple section here, and for 2 of these sections up here, what I'm going to do is split these up into chunks. In fact, I'm going to do it for so this bottom one here is going to be just one long slab of stone. The blue one is going to be 2 slabs of stone, and the purple one is going to be 3 slabs of stone. So what I'm going to do is bring in another guide, snap it to the middle, like that. And I'm just going to come in, bring in that there, grab that colour, and all I'm going to do is do a slight variation. There we go. I'm filling in like that. So you see those are now 2 versions of blue. And I'm going to do that to this orange as well. So I'm going to drag another orange section here, this marquee box, grab that colour, get a slightly different orange, keep pressing F. There we go. So I've got 2 colours there. These colours mean something. I'm not setting this up arbitrarily. This colour actually means something. Cool. Now, if anyone's not familiar with how guides work in Photoshop, you drag them down from the guideline up here, Control R to see them. But if you hold Shift while you do that, you're going to be snapping to increments. So what I'm going to be doing is snapping this to 33%, like that. And then I'm going to snap it to 66%. Because that is as close to an even third distribution as I can get. Because you can't split a whole unit, say a whole section, into 3 equal sides using whole numbers. You can't do that. So you've got to have like 3.333 repeating percent. But I'm just going to do just 33%. So I'm going to grab this section, get that color, change that, and then I'm going to grab this, change to that. So I've got 3 versions of purple there. I'm going to do the same thing for this blue version. So scrap all that, grab this blue, like that, and then just grab this last bit, like that. Cool. So now what I've got, if I turn off all my view, show, guides, there you go. So this is my trim sheet. So if you ignore the slight variations in color and you just think about going horizontally, what I've got is 3 sections at the bottom, which are going to be bigger elements that are going to be tiling left to right. And then I've got 3 elements at the top, which are thinner, but they're going to be tiling left to right. And then what I've got is a slight color variation. So what's happening is the very bottom green one, that's just one big slab of whatever it's going to be. The one above it is going to be broken up into 2 sections. The one above that one is going to be broken up into 3 sections. Literal tiling. You know, if you think how stone masonry works when you build environments, in the real world, when you build plinths, when you build columns, anything like that, it won't just be one massive big slab of stone that like a 20 foot by 20 foot by 20 foot slab of stone. You know, they're going to build it in sections, obviously. So this is basically what we're setting up. And then the same thing for the bottom one, for the top one. So I'm going to have that big red section. That's going to be one big long bit. Then the orange section is going to be 2 bits, and the blue section at the very top is going to be 3 bits. So I'm going to do that. And all I'm going to do with this is just export it as a JPEG. So I'm going to export this. Export, there we go. Export as. I'm just going to put this out as a JPEG, and I'm going to put this as 1K. I don't need this to be a 4K map or anything like that because it doesn't really matter. No, what I'm not going to do is make it a very small map just because pixels might blend and blur. And what I want is this to be fairly crisp. But I'm just going to go 1K map. So I'm going to export that. And I'm going to make up a new folder for this. I'm going to call this texture. Or I'm going to just trim. ID, because this is technically an ID map, and an ID map is just allowing us to ID sections, identify sections. So I'm going to make a new folder. I'm going to call this trim examp. There we go. So let's put it in there. You can actually see another trim sheet that I've done before. Well, no, that's for a hair mask, so it's not a trim sheet. But this little image here can be classed as you could do something similar like this for a trim sheet. The only difference is they're all going vertical, and then I've got a little bit at the bottom. That was actually used as a guide to put hair cards for characters. I'll put this in here, so it's called a trim ID, I'm calling it. There we go. And then, hello, we're in Substance Painter. So in Substance Painter now, all I've done is just imported, made a new project, sorry, with just a big flat plane with perfect square UVs, as you can see. I've not done any baking or anything like that. I've not baked anything here on the right hand side. But what I'm going to do is import some information. I'm going to import that new map. So I'm going to File, Import Resources to bring something in. I'm going to add that resource, and then I'm going to navigate to my trim example file, find my trim ID, and then when I've brought that in, here's my thing. What I'm going to do is identify this as a texture. Now this is just so we can make sure that when we're searching for stuff, or when Substance Painter looks at different files, it knows its kind of purpose in the engine. And if we just set it to texture, it just means it's a general image. All the others, it's going to want to use as certain things. So I'm just going to put this as texture, like that. Now at the bottom here, you're going to have import your resource to. Now this is important to pay attention to, because you've got three options here. You've got import to current session. So if I import this under current session, I'm going to import it, I'm going to do stuff. I save it, I close it, I reopen it. That's not going to exist anymore. Import to project keeps it with this. Import it to project will always, with this folder, with this file, will always be here. So every time I open the new folder, open the file again, that's going to be there. You know, I'm not going to lose this ID map. And then export to library your assets basically makes it a permanent part of your toolkit. So if you've got something, if you make a new texture that you think, I'm always going to use that, or you make your own material that I'm always going to do that, you can bring it into your assets. But I'm going to set mine to project because I want to keep it with this project, but when I'm done with it, I don't want it to be hanging around my Substance Painter folders. So I'm going to import. So we don't see anything yet because it's not technically been applied. We've imported it into the scene, and if we go to Window View Assets, there we go. And if you search for texture, these are all the textures, or everything identified by texture. But there you go, you got your ID map right there, which is good. Now how we're going to use this is I'm going to move my head to the side a little bit, whoop, like this. On the right hand side in texture set settings, you've got your bake mesh map settings, and in here these are all the different things that you can bake, and I can't remember if we've covered baking yet. We will cover baking, but all these are what make our life in Substance Painter really, really easy. They allow us to be very, very quick and expressive with our usage of materials, with cool little functions and programs. Generators, I'm sure we've talked about generators. They need certain maps to be baked in. But I'm just working on a flat plane, so I don't actually need any baking information at all. I might do a baking just for getting the baking process done to get at least some stuff in there, but generally I'm not going to use it that much because it's a flat plane. But what I've got here is select ID map, third one down. So if I click that, I then have this, my trim ID. So I'm going to click that. There you go. So you don't see anything change because this is all in the background. This isn't actually being applied as a color to the surface. But if I press B a few times, we're going to cycle through our bakes, B for bake. So when it hits the ID, this is our ID map. So you can see it being applied there. You can see all the different colors. It's all good. Right there. So I'm going to run a bake anyway. So move myself back there. So I'm just going to run a bake just by pressing just the top here, bake mesh maps. So I'm going to click that one, and I'm just running this just to get the baking process out of the way because my normal map isn't going to give me anything. I can't have normals on a flat plane. It's impossible. I can't generate normals from a flat plane, I should say. I'm going to keep on my world space. I'm going to turn off my ID because I've already got that made. My ambient occlusion isn't going to make anything. Basically, I'm going to run everything. I'm just going to turn off ID map. Oops, did I say? I'm going to turn off ID map. And in my common settings here, I'm just going to make sure that the whole thing is at 8K. I always bake at 8K. I never bake under 8K. I always bake as high as possible to try and get the best results I can. Again, for this, it's not going to really make much difference. So, I'm going to click Bake Selected Map, or Bake Selected Textures, and we'll run the baking process. This will take a few seconds. And what it's doing here is it's producing all the different maps, and a lot of them are going to be just empty maps with nothing on them because it's a flat plane. But like I said, this is something I do if I'm even not going to use any of the baking information, just because it's part of my process. That one's probably going to be useful. This is the world space normal, so I can actually tell what depth things are. But everything else, a flat plane can't generate ambient occlusion. There's no normal information there to generate normal maps, anything like that. There's no thickness there. Okay, so we're done. Return. Right. So press M for material to go back to normal. And here's where the fun starts. So I'm going to go to layers here, and I'm going to make a folder. I'm going to call this 1. Just call it 1 because I'm going to go from the bottom here. This is 1. I'm going to put a new material in there. I'm going to make this red. Go away. And I'm going to make this very shiny metal. So this very shiny red chrome right here is covering the entire thing. Now this is where the ID map comes in. On this folder here, I'm going to add a color selection mask. So I'm not going to add a black mask this time. I'm going to add a mask with color selection. And this is why we made this ID map. So do that. And now we lose everything. But, ooh, what we've got here on the left-hand side, we've got the ID mask, and then we've got this color. So if I pick color, boom. When I pick color, it brings the ID map up, and I can basically say, I want to assign this to the green. So I'll pick the green, and now I'm only assigning that information to that green channel. So that means anything I do within this folder is going to be contained within that folder. So I can go sick, and it's only ever going to be contained there. And I can make another one, call this 2. And just do the same thing, you know, add color map, pick selected, boop. And I can do 2 of them as well, so I can keep both of these in the same map. So this is some really kind of just knocking up the understanding a little bit. So this one here, the color selection is only building off this one green, and this one green is literally just that green. The second one is building off the middle, these 2 blues. However, there's 2 variations of blues in there. There's this slightly darker blue, or this more desaturated blue, and then there's this more saturated blue. But they're still part of the same trim sheet element. Which means in this area, on this folder, I'm going to be producing the information for both of these. However, I'm then going to be making another folder above that. I'm going to place 2.5, or actually they're not 2.5, I'll call this 2 left. There you go. 2 left. Because on this one what I can do is apply another color selection map, pick color, but I'm going to pick this left blue. So on this particular folder, I'm going to make variations for that left section. So I'm going to have tiling, floor tiles, but on the left one, on that one I'm going to have some variation again because it's being controlled within that area. And then I've got another one, call this 3. So I'll do this because I've got 3 mid, 3 right. Or 3 left. I'll keep my naming conventions the same. Because the same thing's happening on this one. So this one, my 3, this is going to be controlling all this purple section. So with this, I'm going to pick all the purple section through the middle in this first initial 3 folder. So that's going to be, I'm going to be applying texture all across that purple section. And then the mid one, this one's just going to be applying variations for the middle one. And this left one is just going to be applying variations for the left one. Now on these two, what I'll be doing, on anything where it's like mid or left or anything like that, so I've got my 2 left and then my 2 mid and my 3 left. Yeah, my 2 left and my 3 mid and my 3 left. I'll not be doing anything which is going to cover up the information. I'm just going to be adding things to basically be on top of it. So I'm going to have a bunch of folders. So I might as well make a bunch of them. Again, that's why folders are really good, because, you know, unfortunately part of the texturing process is you might have a lot of layers. Now this one's going to be nice because this is just that red section. This is 4. That's nice and easy. Now this one is going to be 5, but it's going to be... This is both the orange sections now. And then the one above it is going to be 5 left. So yeah, I can get rid of some of these at the end. There's going to be 6. There's going to be 6 mid. There's going to be 6 left. So I can get rid of these 3. 6 mid. 6 left. There you go. So I've taken a few minutes just to add a color selection to each one of these, and then I can go through and just basically add color again, just to break up the variations. So you can see there, that one I've just added into 2 left is only affecting the left one. But remember, in this one, what I'm probably going to do is do a lot of like black masking over the top. So I'm not going to be covering up what's underneath. I'm just going to be adding like moss or something, adding variation to it. But just for now, I'm just applying materials in. So we're 3. You know, it takes a few minutes, but if you set it up now, everything is much easier later on. In fact, I'm going to just duplicate these as well. I'm just going to pass these into this, pass this into this. Here we go, and then I can just change. So all I'm doing there is literally just duplicating the layer by Control D and not the layer. Well, yeah, the fill layer. I'm duplicating the fill layer. Control D. And just putting it into its relevant folder. So what I'm going to do is just change that to be a kind of blue color. Like that. So 4, there we go. Oh, no, there's nothing in that one, is there? That's just a single one on its own. 5. I'm going to stick one in there. Then stick one above it. Make a slight variation. So on this one, I've not grabbed all 3. There we go, all 3 of those elements. There we go. So I've got something similar to what I did in Photoshop. And here I'm just color coding stuff just to make sure that everything is obviously applied. And I can still do stuff above all these different folders as well. So if I want to apply a global thing over top of everything, just to kind of, you know, make the texture look nicer, I can do that above all these folders. But what I'm dealing with here is isolated information. So let me just take. There we go. Awesome. So what I'm going to do is make some stone on this first red section, or in fact, I might just make a big stone texture, like a very global stone texture above everything else, and then I'm going to again be very cheeky. I'm going to start applying this to all these different layers. So I'm going to make a stone texture. So this is the base of it. It's not going to have any. Well, this is just the base. This is going to be color. So I'm going to call this stone base. Base, and above that one I'm going to make another one which is just going to be color for now anyway, which I'm going to add. I'm going to make this a bit of a darker bluer color, something like that. Add a black mask, add a fill, and just do the same thing we've been doing for ages, you know, just adding kind of noise to that. So get no. In fact, is there any stone things that can help me out? Stone, not stone. Greenstone. See how that goes. See what that gives me. Okay, yeah, they're quite nice actually. Oh, not bad, not bad. Don't want to do anything with that. Just going to change that. Change the colour to be something a bit greener. This time into the grayscale, I'm going to grab another noise. I'm just going to grab a noise this time. Look through my noises. Something that's going to, you know, I want, you know, when you look at stone that's been out in the nature for a while, it's not just a nice flat colour, it's got lots of information on it. So I'm just trying to think about all the different colours that might happen. I've got a little bit of, obviously I've got the grey of the stone, then I might have some darker elements, then I might have some greener elements. I'm not thinking of anything like moss at the minute, but I'm thinking about natural kind of build up. None of that, none of that. And I'm really not looking for the names as well, I'm just looking for the general feel of the texture. Give that a go. So put that in. Like that. Let's try messing with the blend setting, see what that does. Come here. Quite like that. It's quite nice. And I'm going to add another layer, just colour for now, make it a bit darker, maybe a bit on the bluer side. Black mask once again. Fill, and this I'm going to make lots of pitting. So if like, let's go for a dirt 2. Yeah, there we go. I'm going to make another one. I'm going to set this to multiply, because on this one what I'm going to do is change my. I'm going to keep the same colour, but I'm going to change my noise to something globally soft. What? Okay, I like that one, the moisture one. Yeah! There we go. So what I'm doing here is just building up lots of noise to make a kind of stone material. I've not even thought about anything about normals or information, any normal information. I just want a general noise. Now we'll start applying a little bit of normal, because with this one that I've added, this is all my my spotty noise. So what I'm going to do is turn on my height and my normal and my roughness. I'm just going to start introducing a little bit of height into it, just a touch. I'm also, while I'm working nice and big, I'm also going to turn my texture settings size to 4K, which will slow stuff down a little bit, but I kind of want to get a better idea about my texture early on. There we go, that's a bit better. Really increase my roughness a little bit, because again, if you think about it, um, where moisture gathers and then starts to, produce mold and stuff. That's going to produce probably some really nice, really rough areas where light just gets absorbed. It still looks a little bit like marble at the minute though, so I don't want that. I want very, very rough rock. But I'm going to play with some of the heights of this very, very noisy material that I've just put on. Like that. Bring the roughness on, turn the roughness up. That's nice. I like that. And I'm gonna, is that my, oh, so my spotty one here, I'm gonna literally duplicate this, this dirt here, and I'm going to not invert it. I'm going to noise parameters. That's what I'm looking for, and adjust the disorder. So the disorder basically randomizes it, but I'm also going to set my, so on this particular modifier, it's normal. So what it's doing is literally overwriting the things underneath it. So I'm going to set that to be linear dodge add. So basically they're additive to each other. They don't take away from each other. I think I might add. See what this height does? No, that height is bad. But I'm going to try this roughness. Yeah, okay. So I reckon that's it for my roughness. My height still needs a bit of work. I think I need to pull that one down a touch bit more. Careful with the height. There we go. I'm going to add one more layer on top, which is only going to be height. And I'm going to add again black mask. Add a fill. And on this, I want to add something that's going to give me some like rocky, some sort of rock. If I get anything that's like rock. What's this? Grunge rock. No. What I want is something that's what we would call in the business cell-like. Okay, so I'm going to use this cell 4, which by default is going to look horrendous when I add some height onto it. That looks atrocious. And in fact, yeah, I'm going to second guess myself straight away. I'm going to not use that at all. So I'm still hunting for my lovely noise texture. Noise. So I always seem to go back to, I don't want to use something. Ooh. Sheen noise. Let's give that a go. Okay, yeah, that looks okay. It's not powerful enough though for me. That needs to be far more powerful. But I guess that's all it's given me, so if I duplicate that, and I'm going to add this one, multiply. Okay, so it's giving me something. I guess on both of these I will, oops, not that. Set my tiling to 2 on both of them. I think I'm going to rotate one away to the other. Okay, it's getting kind towards what I want. A little bit of an uneven rock surface. Okay, so that's my general rock. So I've used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I've used 6 layers for that. So I'll put that in a folder. There we go. Rock base. And again, because of the way I've built that, all these are changeable later on. I can change all these later on. That's my rock base. Let's put it at the bottom. Now what I'm going to do is start to use these to start adding more information. As we've been talking about. So, I'm going to delete that. Oh, this should be outside. Like that. There you go. So I want to put this underneath everything right here. So this isn't in any of the folders. This is in here. Because then this influences everything above it. All that I'm going to be introducing on top of it is going to be things to give myself some more normal information to get to make cracks in between stuff. Some other information to make like mossy buildup or cracks or anything like that. I'm going to add variation to it through these different layers. But using the fact that these are all now in these selection groups to help me maintain stuff. So, in this first layer, what I'm going to do is... Well, in fact, in this first layer, all I'm going to do is... I might be a bit free. I'm going to do a bit of paint on this one. So I do want these to all look like slabs. So this isn't just like straight up rock. I do want these to look a little bit like slabs. So what I'm going to do is... Yeah, add a fill layer. But turn off everything except height and roughness. Push the height in a little bit. And this, I'm going to paint a black mask. But then... I'm going to add a paint modifier to this because I'm actually going to paint on this, I think. Nope, not a generator. Paint, please. Paint. So now I can actually paint on this. So I'm going to push the height right down. Okay, so now I can paint. And I'm also going to add like max. I'm going to up that roughness so whenever I paint on it now, it gets really rough. And if I want to add colour to it, I can do. All I'm going to do with this is just get a nice rough looking kind of brush. So I'm going to kill my filter, look at my brushes, and I'm going to look for something that's just a little bit rough. And I do kind of want to be a bit... normally when I'm texturing, I tend to texture with quite soft brushes and build up because that's like what character artists do. But on this, I do actually want something that's quite drastic and quite noisy as well. So if I go for this charcoal full frame. Okay, that's looking alright. Now this is going to be quite fun because what I can do is basically do some photoshopping. So I'm going to click where I want to start from, hold shift and control, and that's going to draw a straight line. In fact, no, I don't want that one because that's got too much of a... I want something... like that maybe. What does that do? So I'll just experiment with brushes. So click where I'm going to, control and shift, drag where I want to go. Nope. So let's experiment with brushes. Again, move my camera, then I hold shift, click where I want it to go, and then hold shift and control, drag, so I get a straight line going across. And it's good. There you go. I thought it crashed then for a second. So I added that in. This is probably because I'm working at 4K that it's struggling to add that information all at once. I'm literally texturing loads of information on a 4K map. So I'm just going to lower my size down to 1K. So it's going to look a little bit crummy for a bit, but that's going to make it a lot easier to use. Go across. Size my brush down even smaller. Now I can always, and I'm going to make, you know, you can always make adjustments to this. If something's too clean, you can always make adjustments. Plus, because I'm painting with masks, I can take away the mask as well. So if I feel like I've taken too much off this, I need to add more on it, I can do that. There you go. That's what I want. That's exactly what I want right there. So I need to get that on here. So you can see how on this piece here I've gone too far from the edge. But on this one I've only got a little bit of a ridge there. This helped because I'm painting onto the surface. It doesn't really know what to do if I'm painting off the surface. So now what I'm going to do is press X to invert. So now what I'm going to be doing is adding the mask back, and I'm gonna click, hold space. That's better. Oops, I shouldn't have done that. Need to just get my size back. There you go. So I'm working at 4. So I'm gonna click, hold Control and Shift, drag across. There we go. There we go. That's what I want. So that's exactly what I want. So I'm literally painting in that information. And I can just press X to invert my mask. There we go. So black means I'm adding the mask back, taking away that information. White means I'm adding the masks. So I'm adding some of that information. So I might have white in there just to kind of pull that information forward first, across the edge. And then add black back in just to push that back in there. There you go. That's dead nice, that. So if I up that to 4K, that should look quite tasty. Takes a bit of process, obviously. So notice as well how I'm not actually adding any new colours to this. I'm literally just using a layer that's just controlling height and roughness. And I'm going to add a little bit of colour in a second for a reason. But I'm just adding height and roughness. And that's what I'm using. So I'm not actually adding any new colours at the minute. I'm using the very bottom, that like stone texture I made at the beginning. I'm using that underneath everything. Just give it a minute to do its thing. What it thinks about the project. There you go. So it took a bit of time, but then there you go. So at 4K, obviously we're not going to be able to have 4K at the very, very end. Well, we might do, but you know, it depends on how big this map is. Now I said I was going to introduce a bit of colour in a second. That's because what I want to do is just darken down these recesses a little bit. So in my layers, grab that. I'm going to add colour. Like dark or something, but I'm going to remember that this is one of the complex, confusing, or like forgettable parts of Painter that I often forget about. On your layer stack at the very top, you've got this where it says base color, a drop down. What I'm going to do is set my color to be multiply. If I want to use layer blendings when I'm dealing with roughness or metallic or anything like that, I've got to change this whole setup here to be like roughness. So now I'm dealing with all the layer blendings to do the roughness channels. So now just with that, I'm going to set that to normal, to multiply. So just darken down a little bit. And if I just remember that colour, I can come back and grab it again, but if I just remember that colour, I can apply it to all the rest. So for now, that's that bit done. So that's my first section of my trim sheet done, and I'd do a pass of all the basic information. I'd go do a pass of the next information, pass to the next information. But now I'm going to step up to the next lot and do the exact same thing, but 2 different slabs. So Let me add. In fact, what I can do, I can probably grab this layer completely, duplicate this layer actually, drag it up into. Oh, it's struggling. So this is where not working 4K is good, because I've added this new information. So what it's having to do is compute all this new information. That's why it struggles. My system's pretty beefy as well, so it is struggling with this. So if you've got a system which is a little bit lighter, make sure you're always working in your texture settings on a lower resolution, and only use the 4K when you're checking it out. So I've got to let this do its thing. Oh, there we go. Right. So I'm going to change this to. I'm going to see what it looks like how it works in 2K. Again, it's got to do its thing. In fact, I'm going to do sort of 1K. Got to wait for it to do its thing. There you go. Process the information. There we go. Right. So working much lower resolution. So I'm going to drag this into my next one. Get rid of the blue. I don't need that anymore. And what I'm going to do is clear the mask. So I'm going to get rid of this paint. I've still got that paint information loaded in my brush anyway, so make sure you keep you're aware of what brushes you're making. I'm using the Alpha 42 Kyle brush preset Alpha 42. But I'm going to... In fact, I could probably use some of this. Yeah, I am actually I'm going to use what I can, because this is basically the information... There we go. Yeah, this is, see where it goes up to there. This is the information that was on the other one. So what I'm going to do is, again, just do the same process, just... Make sure I'm adding, because I'm black, so I'm adding this new height information to it. I'm taking it away. Because I want this is too big, this dark section. So I need to make sure that that information is still being read on that blue section there, which it is. And you can paint some of this in manually. I've been doing that with a long straight line there, but you can come in and paint stuff in manually to give it a bit more information, give it a bit more flair. So I can kind of like take some chunks out like that. Annoyingly though, it doesn't like to paint off the side. So if I want to hang the brush over the side and tap it in, I can't. But I'm thinking, can I do it in the 2D? Am I able to do it in 2D? No, I can't even do it in 2D. Which is annoying, but then I can just, you know, tap it in, take it off, tap it in, take it off. So again, I'm just going to do the exact same stuff. And notice how, because this is containing both the blue sections, that it is doing both of them. Nudging a bit of personality on it. Get the side bits done. There we go. Now when I'm scaling up and down my brush, what I am looking for is how much information I'm actually losing, because I still want that gnarly information, so I've got to make sure that my brush is, you know, around the same size, which I was, again, making a record of before. It's for the size I was using, so I want to make sure that I'm able to get that information kind of back in there. Carefully stroke that in. Again, for something like this, if it's not neat, I don't care. go. So it's a little bit wobbly, but that's what I want. Now this, like I said, has that division going down the middle. So on this one, what I'm going to do is create that division. But this one I've got to be a bit careful on, because I want to make sure that the information on one side doesn't cross over to the other on these colours. So I've got to make sure I am being a little bit neater with that. So again, I can just add that information in, then take it away, add it in, take it away. There you go. So now I've got two slabs. So I'm creating the initial split using the first one. So for instance, 2, my row 2 on the it's behind my head. So I'll move my head. So here are my layers. I've got 1, which is 1. It's the bottom one. That's only one layer anyway, so I'm just dealing with that. Of 2, so there's the first 2. What that's doing is creating all the height information, all the main information for those, all the splits. And then on 2 left, that's where I'm going to start adding the variations onto this second one, this side one. So I'll do variations on the right hand side one in 2, and then I'll do variations on the left hand one in left 2. And then same thing for 3. So you can see doing this kind of thing it takes a bit of time, but it's fairly easy. So what's that? We've been an hour so far, so it's really good. Okay. So obviously in here I would then go in and start adding the variations. Now I've been doing this on this piece, and I'll probably will come back to this general texture and do some more in it in another video to show you how to do some really cool stuff. But I'm gonna open a new version of Painter and show you the other way we can do this kind of thing, which is a little bit more technical, because it's completely in Substance Painter. I don't do anything in other softwares, but the principle is still the same. So let me go to File, New, Select. I'll find my texture panel. That's good. Add that in. And I'm going to do the same kind of setup. I'm going to start off with my equal segments, my 3 at the bottom, 3 at the top, and I'm going to split them up. And then you go through this. You go through things the exact same way. The only difference with this is I'm not actually going to be using that color map. I'm going to be doing everything inside here. So first of all, I'm going to choose a color layer. I'm going to make it red. I'm going to stick this in a folder. I'm going to call this folder 1, because this is my bottom layer. I'm going to add a white mask onto this one this time. And then on this white mask, I'm going to add a filter. And in this filter, I'm going to scroll to the bottom of this little menu and go to transform. Because this transform does do like transform stuff inside Photoshop. And at the top of this, I'm also going to turn off, it says repeat mode. I'm going to turn this to none. Because what I can do is actually start to use these offsets here, or this scaling I should be using really. So if I set these both to 0, I can use this scaling here, so scale Y, I can scale that together. And we can think about this as percentages as well. So if I know that this is going to be 25%, but at the bottom, then I'm going to put this as 0.25. Now this is 25% of the whole thing. So what I'm going to do is copy that 3 times, duplicate this whole layer 3 times, change the color of each of these. There we go. So that's 320. I've duplicated the same layer, so they should all be 25%. So now what I've got to do, this is a little bit tricky because I can't do maths for this one, or at least I can't do maths. What I'm going to do is offset Y and bring this down to the bottom. Now through my experimentation, minus 0.38 is the perfect bottom part there. So that is now perfectly the bottom of the screen. I'll do the same thing for the purple. And I've got to make sure is that I'm offsetting down. There you go. So that'll be 0.13. There probably is some mathematical equation or mathematical formula which says on if 100% 25 and I'm shifting this to the bottom, you know, I'm just not clever enough to do that kind of thing. So I'm doing this by eye. So I'm offset F this up. There we go. So boom. So instead of using a map, a texture that I've made, the ID map, what I've done is literally used the just a folder with a mask, and on that mask I put a white mask because I actually want this to I want to let this through, and then I'm using that mask to just crush it down while in that transform, just turning off repeat. No flip mode and no repeat mode. And I'm just going to each one of these as well. I'm just going to up my scale on the X, because what you might notice is on the side, on this red one here, you see that you've got a little thin bit of banding there, that white banding. What I'm going to do is if I increase this, that just pushes it over the edge. I'm never going to see it. I'm just going to push it over the edge. So I'm just going to scale like that. So what I'm going to do is do 3 more. But now these ones are going to be 15. Let's call it 15. I like being nice and precise about stuff, as you probably noticed, but there are some times where I'm like, I'm just going to have to make it like this because I'm going to need to. I can't be messing around with trying to make this mathematically perfect. So this one I'm going to go for my scale, and the Y being 0.15. No, it's too much. Let's go. Essentially, it's 25 divided by 3. Let's just do that. Let's get a calculator up. I can't be lazy. Calculator. So it's 25 divided by 3. 8.33 repeating. So 8.33. If I'm going to be really anal. In fact, I'm not going to do that because that means I can't have odd numbers after a decimal point in this, because that means it's going to be blurred between pixels. So I'm going to put this as 8.5 and just cram one in. So my scale 8.5. Oop. Like that, okay. I just offset my Y so it's so this is probably going to be 28, 0.82885. Bit of a faff. In fact, I'll move this down to here. There we go. So next one, what did I say? The scale was 0.085. I'm going to offset this upwards. That matches perfectly anyway, so that's good. Okay, this one's, like I said, it's going to be scale, and this one's 0.085. And then I'm just going to make this the top, so I'm actually just, whoa, not that big, 0.09. This will just be all this top section. Like that. There you go. Boom. So now I've got the pretty much the exact same thing happening with this. I've got my sections laid out. I'm not using an ID map, so what I don't need to do is go through and go color selection. This is just another way of doing it, and then you can make within these folders. You then make a multiply version of that color and basically squash this as a side. So if I duplicate this layer, no, duplicate this one actually. But I'm going to stick this inside this folder. There you go. And this one I'm going to turn this a little bit grey, like that. So this is where the layers can sometimes get a bit confusing even to look at. So let's get rid so we don't see anything we don't need to. There we go. So inside the folder for 2, because I've got to name all these folders. That's 3, that's 4, that's 5, that's 6. So inside the folder for 2, we'll then have left, which is the left side. And what this is going to be doing is controlling all the information for the left hand side. So I've made that a little bit darker, and all I've got to do is then offset this by 50%. There you go. Oh, well, it'll be minus. There you go. So now what I've got is the same thing. These are just two different, so I'd go about things the exact same way for the texturing. This is just two different ways of getting the exact same results. One, I'm going into Photoshop or whatever pixel software you want. As long as you can control these shapes and get them nice and neat, I've got this to control it. And I technically prefer working like this using an ID map, because then I'm able just to kind of like pick selections. The problem with this is you get an overall stack of layers that's quite big. And I see quite a lot of people also work like this, where they're making the layers like this, using this as an ID map, because everything is then within Painter. Everything's very changeable as well, because if I decide that I want to change the size of any of these ID maps, I can literally just change them inside here. I don't have to go make another ID map. Oh, sorry. If I want to change the size of any of these trim sheet elements, or even add more change divisions, anything like that, I can do it all inside here. I don't have to go and make another ID map, which is cool, but it's the controlling of the controlling of the trim sheet elements. For me, that's a bit complex. So, a bit annoying. So we're up to an hour. So after an hour, we've got both these ID maps going on, so we can make them both the exact same way. Well, we can make them both these two different ways. One in Photoshop, creating an ID map like this. All I've done here is, like I said, I've just made sure that I've been very precise with my my rules, so I know how much is being set up. Obviously, I'll know this ahead of time as well, because this is just the same template I was talking about originally from the chairs. So I can have one section. This bottom section could be one type of fabric. This section here could be another type of fabric. This could be another type of fabric, and then I could have different wood materials, different frame materials here: wood, light wood, metal, and I can just pick and choose what I want. But then for this purpose, to make things a bit more interesting, I've said, okay, what about if we take the exact same setup using this 3 sections at the bottom, 3 sections at the top, but I'm going to chop these in half and chop these into thirds as well, because then that's going to be something that you'd use for, if I'm making this out some stone elements, I'd need big long pieces of stone, I'd need half stones, I'd need whatever stones. The great thing about that as well is I don't need to use the entire block. Obviously this one down here, the green, I'd probably use that entire block to do something, but with any of the other ones that have been broken up in either into halves or into thirds, I can pick and choose. If I've got a piece of geometry for a UV for a piece of geometry, and I just want to use this section, I just have to drop it over this section. If I want a single tile, or maybe I want, a single tile, maybe I want just 2 tiles, so I'll just take these two, or I'll just take these 2. Same for up here. I either take the entire long strip, or I can choose to take both of them, or just one of them, or 2 of them. I've got choices. I've got absolute choices. Oops, it is it. And it's just about taking your, that's why. It's just about taking your time and getting to know Painter a bit more. Because what I've done here, the most complex thing I've done here is using the ID map, and then another complex element of this is just getting control in these elements. There are other things you can do to make it a bit more visually understandable. You can color code them. So what I've got 6 things here, so I can get 6 colors. So I can say, okay, this, and right click, all my level 1s is going to be a red layer. All my level 2s are going to be orange layers. All my level 3s are going to be yellow layers. All my level 4s are going to be green layers. All my level 5s are going to be teal. All my level 6s are going to be blue. And then my base material is purple. Like that. So at least there I can see the chunks as well. I can see the chunks of information. So I can see my blue, my green, my red, my orange, all that kind of stuff. Because in fact that is just part of the beast. You know, if you're making something, if you're making a trim sheet with a lot of information, you're going to have a lot of layers. If you make anything, to be honest, you're going to have a lot of layers. This isn't like painting in Photoshop where you can do everything on one layer. You shouldn't be doing this kind of thing. You should be controlling things using control groups. Oh no, well, folders to control groups. You need to be controlling things using masks, either black or white, or in this case I'm also using a color map to control stuff. So you've got to, you know, slowly make these things. I think a good place to start is the floor tiles. Any kind of like flat floor tiles on something like this is much easier to learn how to do these things because you're on a flat surface. And then progress that information, making even more complex tiles, making variations, and then doing things like this where you're actually saying, okay, I'm doing something where I'll need trim sheet elements. And these idea maps as well, you don't need to use them for just trim sheet elements. What if you're making black and white flooring? So let's quickly make something like that. Again, this is not something I've planned to do, but I'm just thinking it might be a good idea to show that. So what I can do is create 2 base materials and then use an ID map to basically separate the 2 of them out. So I'm going to go to Photoshop again. There you go. I'm going to make a new 1024 by 1024 canvas like that. And I'm going to say this is going to be, so it needs to be even numbers. So again, I'll do 25% again. So every 25%, we're going to have a different thing occurring. Right. So that's going to be blue, and then I'm going to now I sometimes do this kind of stuff just for poops and giggles, just to practice stuff. I'll sometimes come back into Photoshop and remake textures like we used to back in the old days before Painter. I'll sometimes do stuff like this. I'm like, I want to do something. I'm just going to try a little bit of something. So that's my ID map. So that's full. I call this tile ID. Go to Painter. New. Oh. I'm gonna okay. So that's my plane. I'd wish they'd have like a preset where it's just like a flat plane. They do have something like it, but it doesn't work very well in my opinion. Import resources, add my resource, find that tile ID, set it as a texture, make sure it's on this project. That's all good. I'm gonna quickly set up 2 materials. And that in folders. These folders I'm really only using for debugging as well, to make sure this works. So I'll add that. Go as well. Add a color selection. Just that. I might as well do it on the other one just to be sane as well. There we go. So now everything I do to 1, say I'm going to start changing stuff here, this is all going to be okay. And then I'm going to add a new one, add a black mask, add a layer inside there. To this black mask I'm going to add a paint layer. In fact, I'm not going to add a paint layer, I'm going to do something quite cool. Okay. So to this, so I've got my grey material in here, but I've got a black mask applied, so it's been hidden. But to this, I'm going to add a fill, and to that fill, I'm going to add a tile generator. There it is. I'm going to invert it. There we go. Hopefully, you might be able to see where I'm going with this. For my pattern, I'm going to make this a square. So where's it gone? It's just really thin. Oh, what? Oh, because it's really, really thin, so I need to do my sizes. Let me scale. There you go. Bring my scale in a little bit. There we go. 4x4. There we go. And then to that, I can just bring the height down a little bit. Just a smidge. And then just above that tile generator, I'm actually going to make a new. I'm going to add a new fill. I'm going to add a filter to above my tile generator and just add a bit of bevel. There we go. Play with some of that bevel distance. There you go. So what I've got there is the beginning of floor tiles where this top one, this is my grout. So this is the this is all like the cement where the tiles are actually stuck on there. So within that folder I can make like a really nice noisy material. You know, I can make a nice rough noisy material which is going to separate stuff off. And then in each of the other ones, I've got the two different two different tile types, so I can add. So I've got my red one in there, but just to show you how cool this stuff is. Every time I do it, I get excited by doing it. I'm going to make a new folder in there. I'm going to have a black mask, and to that black mask, I'm going to add a fill, and let's just say I add a marble because we're all using marble a lot at the minute. There you go. So now it looks like we've got separate tiles. Like I've actually got like a tile from a set and they're all randomized because I've got these different things. And then I can do the same for this one. It really does. Really does make me happy, this stuff. Because I've applied the exact same marble material, so technically all the marbling is actually lining up. But if I go and just change in the noise parameters, if I just change the marbling and the disorder on one of them, the marble doesn't match up. So now these are two different marble textures. How incredibly cool is that? So really fun stuff we can do with ID maps, setting up trim sheets, and even like we're just looking at there, how we can then go in and start using just these simple layer setups to make some variations. Because the ID map is controlling, it's just masking off what I'm seeing in two different areas, and then I'm just using stuff we already used, this tile generator that we made our marble tiles with. I'm just creating better separations, grout separations. So imagine using that for when you're doing, I'm literally looking at my, because my toilet's literally right there, my bathroom. I'm looking at all the different tiles. It's made up of these variations of creamy kind of toned tiles. And if I just set up like a really nice ID map, all randomized and stuff, I'll be able to get some really nice randomization. So that's where I'm going to leave it for this video, and then we'll probably come back and do it again. So see you in the next one.